Hello, my name is Imogen Caterer and I'm the admin of the Operational Case Study Exam Facebook group. That's CIMA's Operational Case Study Exam. It was founded in February 2018, partly because I was sitting the exam then, but I have stayed on and to help other people, and this recording is designed to be on play when there hasn't been a pre-scene released ready for the next sitting. And I discuss here mainly what can you do when your pre-scene hasn't come out, because I've noticed there's plenty of people who show an interest, even if they haven't passed those three major syllabuses, the F1, P1 and E1, show an interest in the operational case study exam before then. I hope that isn't too badly motivated by fear. Because it has quite a reputation for a high failure rate, but it varies what rate it is. In itself, that's quite concerning. The operational case study exam is unlike any other of the operational exams. I suspect some of its failure is just people not being used to the format or how it works or what have you. So if you're looking at either the previous professional papers or even the CIMA certificate and most or all of the AAT, you kind of work your way through the textbook, or you work your way through classroom education through the contents of the module, and then you do your revision where you do lots of exam questions and see if you match up, and you might go back to the textbook a bit, but basically it's a linear process. Exam, go through the textbook, go through the revision period, sit the exam, and hopefully pass it. That's almost every other exam you've done in accountancy. And the operational case study is not like that. The operational case study is trying to mimic a work environment, which you can debate how successful it is on that. It certainly does mimic a work environment in many ways on the run up to it, because in a working environment there isn't a very clear path to do all the tasks available. You have to do a bit of this, bit of that, and hence we have managers who manage things when you've got to do umpteen different tasks at different times. Operational case study is not linear. There are attempts to say just go through this order of tasks and you'll pass, but in practice people go back and forth up and down that task list. Here are the elements you've got to pull together. You need to understand the exam, and I find quite a few people are quite late to understand the exam, if in the end they ever do. You've got to have some understanding of, hey, it's human marked, and that makes a huge difference. Human marked, often at speed because people are paid by script. So you're looking to communicate that you have the answers, the key facts they're looking for, and make them easy to read. Okay, so knowledge of the exam leads in that case to writing technique. You also have 3 syllabuses. Now there's an official Kaplan textbook for CIMA, Kaplan textbooks for CIMA, and if you add up all the pages in the F1, P1 and E1 text, there are 56% more pages in them than the famously long novel War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. There's a lot potentially to learn. So you need a strategy to somehow do it. Sometimes I hear people say, I'm reading the textbook, and go, wow, I'm not sure you're going to pick up that much just doing that straightforwardly. And so the 3 textbooks. The 3 textbooks, you're going to have, so 3 textbooks, knowledge of the exam, knowledge of the writing technique and ability to do it. Closely aligned with that, some of you may want to learn touch typing. If you're some way before the pre-scene is released, it'd be a very good moment. Typing club. We'll go into probably more detail later on, not in this video, but later on what you can get away with in terms of writing, in terms of do you have to correct every word, or can you do something more liberally minded? You know, will they mark it if it just makes sense, which they will, by the way. But there's a bit more to that. So yes, upping your typing might well be another element you have to fit in. Pre-scene, when it comes, you'll have, I believe, 5 weeks to look at your pre-scene and get to know that company, and you will be playing a finance officer, or it may have a different title, but it's something like that, within that company. We'll do a lot more talk about the pre-scene later on. But let's go back to knowing the exam. I'm not going to give you all the answers for knowing the exam, because I think finding them out actually is helpful to you. You can learn it, you can hear other people's commentary on it. You'll find there's lots of commentary, and there can be quite a bit of contradiction even on what the best way is to do certain things in the operational case study exam. That's all stuff you've got to cope with. This is the non-linear relationship of it. That's normal course of events when you've got different tasks to juggle. So where was I? And you get lost sometimes in the middle of it. Yes, know more about the exam. Know about its pass mark. Know that you can get the right scale to score or above the level of the scale to score and still fail. Why is that? Well, I think you'll find out. But look into that. Get to know it, because sometimes that can affect how you behave in the exam. You've got to get certain types of marks to pass. The thing to look at is, well, what are the questions? What are the subjects that come up? Because there are some subjects that come up more commonly than others. Where do you go for that? Well, there's an examiner's report. If you go into, I think it's the CIMA Connect website, but you can search for these things on Google. Operational case study exam, February 2018, say, and it'll point you to the pages you can get from there. It's the pages. I think you may have to log in, but you'll go to the pages, and every sitting there they create a page which has all the variants and the suggested answers and the examiner's report for each of the variances. It's actually an examiner's report for all of the 5 different variances, which they create 5 different variances as a way of preventing cheating, by the way. So when you get an examiner's report, it'll tell you what subject it was testing and what module it comes from, whether it's E1, P1 or F1, and it will give comments on how well they were answered. But first of all, I should look and see what the patterns are, what things keep coming up. I'll give you there will be a bit of a guide in the group of what things come up, but it's really good to actually have a look at the patterns yourself and get an understanding yourself. And then look at the exam papers and see if you can answer the questions. Because even if you pass them, there's a good chance you can't answer those questions. Even if you've passed the objective test, as they say. Why? Because they're now testing your skill to write things out. You know, the accounting standards, for instance, you have to know in far more detail in the operational case study exam than you do, in my view, in the OT papers. where you might just get a multiple choice on them. Quite a few multiple choices, admittedly, but you'll probably get just a multiple choice. We don't need to know it to the same degree. So have a look at the examiner's reports, have a look at the papers, and that will give you a good guide of what comes up. Now, if you really can't do all that analysis now, but you want to do some revision, here's a rough guide of some major things that almost certainly are going to come up. One, working capital will come up. I think almost every person ever sat the paper has been given a working capital question. Variance analysis is likely to come up, and it's likely to be the advanced variances that they'll test you, but they may well throw in the basics as well. You may be wanting to call it basic variances in inverted commas. Often though, look at the actual exam question for them, because they'll give you the reasons why those some variances occurred, and then you have to kind of work out which variance they would have affected. Is often the nature of the question. Linear programming comes up quite a lot. Yeah, those are the ones that I'm trying to give you an example from E. Look up the examiner's report and see what comes up on E. I'm not going to give you detailed observations on E, the E module at the moment, I think. So that's it. That's where I would start. Exam. Find out about the exam. Get yourself some of the past exam papers, and you will begin to kind of train your mind, your brain, to if you're doing that module, say, and you find out, hold on, the operational case studies like to examine my working capital, and it'll examine my accounting standards, and I'll have to know them, you know, almost word for word. You might get away with not being exact, but you've got to get the understanding of them right, the meaning of those accounting standards right. Okay, if you're working for F1 at the time, that will inform how you'll learn, you'll know, and you might put different notes down because of it. So it can be really helpful to look at the module you're studying if you haven't finished studying all of the 3 prior modules. And that should get you started, at least. I will no doubt post more resources in time in the group. So if you keep an eye out on us, we'll be growing and developing. I've talked mainly in this on where to start, very practical, but there is a huge element of the operational case study exam and coming up to it, which isn't just about do this, do that. You can get some pretty uninspiring feedback if you do mock exams. I did. How do you cope with that? How do you cope? In some senses, people get tired. I got to a point at one point when I was doing my operational case study exam where, in the coming up to it, I had a mock that I'd gone badly wrong. But I knew in my bones that what I needed to do was revise F1, and I did, and it was crucial to me passing, I'm sure. And it's that kind of journey. You'll see people, no doubt, in our group or in the wider Facebook groups, who just get in a kind of, I don't know where to start. That's a mental state going on, okay? Everyone else doesn't really know where to start, but we picked something up that looked related to the operational case study exam and kept looking and looked at it. Past papers being particularly good because they often drive you back to the textbook, realising that you don't know the stuff. And so there's a really interesting mental state around this. People will reliably at some point lose their motivation. A lot of this is fear of failure goes on, and people don't necessarily want to look at what they need to look at to pass the exam sometimes, because of that fear of failure. My other background, as I was finishing off my AAT, I was also doing a coaching qualification. So that sort of, how do you actually get from where you are to a point where you're exam ready? That bit really interests me, and I don't see learning providers really doing anything on it. Yes, they provide lots of resources and technical stuff and information about the exam and all this that they do, and some of them do that really, really well. But there's a human aspect to this, and that's what interests me, and that's why I keep the operational case study group going, because I like dealing with that sort of stuff. Let me give you, first of all, a recommendation. As I said right at the beginning of this, it's a non-linear task. You know, starting F2, I knew to get through a textbook and understand it. You know, there isn't anything that's that linear about the operational case study. You don't know what to do. There's too many elements. You don't actually know what to do. You don't know what will actually get you to the result you need. In that circumstances, there is a book written deliberately at that circumstance where you don't know quite what to do. You may have some ideas, but you don't know what to do. And how do you find your way through it? It's actually one of, at the moment, I think it's, last time I looked, which was fairly recently, it was at number 4 in the business books. But I'm going to suggest it to you not as work, but as the book you might want to read at night just before you go to sleep, because this is not going to be the hard academic slog, but it is all about how you do the thing you don't know how to do. And it's called Creating the Impossible, okay? And it's a book by a chap named Michael Neal, who I met and actually trained under. And I'm trying to see if there's a particularly appropriate review. Thoughtful, spontaneous, inspired, lofty, down to earth, and with the clarity and good humour to make it highly usable. By the way, one thing that he does say in here is one of the great unsung heroes of creating stuff is putting in the hours. And yeah, there is a job to do in terms of putting in the hours. But you're going to enjoy putting in those hours or absolutely hate them, well, that'll be down to your mental state. As I say, I'm Imogen Caterer. I'm the admin of the Operational Case Study Facebook group. I hope you will join us for the ride, and do feel free to ask questions, and your peers will probably answer them, and they'll give you some perspectives, and you need to decide what's the right way forward for you. Thanks for listening.